So welcome back to obviously Fight Talk, and I am delighted to say we are now joined by the voice of Bellator, a man who will be in the octagon, well, the occasion, sharing it with all the fighters on the night in New York. So Jimmy Smith, welcome back to obviously Fight Talk, second appearance, and we're looking forward to New York.
Yeah, I am, man. It's going to be a huge show. All the fans are looking forward to it. It's going to be a big day for us.
Does it feel different at all, this one, considering it's pay-per-view in New York?
It feels really different from every kind of angle. I mean, from the inside, production-wise, it's 6 hours total, I think. You know, we have prelims, and we have a free show on Spike, and then we have the pay-per-view. And so just physically, the amount of stuff we have to do is incredible. And so it's a big show for us, not even just in terms of the fights that are going on, but the size and the length of the show. Everything's different. Everything's changing.
A lot of people are talking about the format, the way they have, the way Bellator are doing the prelim card and then doing like a free show. It's like Bellator 180 and then they're doing the pay-per-view. What's the reason behind that? Is that just because Spike need a show as well? Or what's the reason behind not just doing a prelim card and a pay-per-view like the normal traditional way?
Yeah, well, I think it was an idea of the more people we get interested in the card itself, the more people will stick around for the pay-per-view. That if you get people interested, if you show them it's a good show, and then it's okay, go from here to the pay-per-view, they'll want to continue watching. If we give them something good to begin with, they're going to want to stick around and watch the pay-per-view. So they're putting a lot in before the pay-per-view to try to get people, hey, to tune in, check it out, get interested, and maybe you'll stick around for the pay-per-view. That's the logic behind that.
Looking at the main event is the bad guy himself, Mr. Chael P. Sonnen. Wanderlei was missing during the week for the press conference, and as Chael said with his shoe on the table, he wasn't really needed.
Yeah. Chael has a habit of making fighters who are already emotional more emotional. Yeah. We saw against Tito, you know, it was a guy, you know, that's the thing that gets me about Chael is that he's talking about guys that don't need a whole lot of motivation to get in the gym. These are guys that already are passionate, they're already upset, they already take fights really, really personally, and Chael gets in their face and makes it worse, you know, as far as that goes, which that's his style, that's what he does. So it's always interesting because these are guys you don't need to push their buttons to get them motivated, and he pushes their buttons anyway. So we'll see how it goes. Because strategy-wise, it's one of those things you think about. It's not like you're taking Fedor and you're pushing his buttons and making a guy who's normally ice-cold emotional. I can understand that. He does that to people who are already emotional. It's not like it's a tactical thing where I'm going to get him out of his game. That is Wanderlei's game, is to take fights personally and get angry about them. So we'll see how it works.
How does Sonnen do it? How does he, you know, he lost his last fight, but it doesn't really seem like it's affected him at all. Not even a little bit. How does he do it?
I don't know. I really don't. I've worked with the guy, obviously. He's joined us in the booth a few times. He's a consistent presence in Bellator. He just has an ability to turn that on. I mean, he's not like that all the time. And that was, you know, something I was honestly worried about going in the booth with a guy like that. 'Cause it's hard to fit that personality in the booth. Well, in the booth, he's not that guy. But when it comes to fight time, when he's talking about his opponent, when he's at a press conferences, when he's weighing, wherever he is, he's suddenly Chael P. Sonnen, the American gangster, and he's able to turn that on and go 100% in that direction. And it's a talent. It's his thing, man.
With obviously the first fight against Tito, a lot of people were disappointed. There was claims of fix. There was numerous things said about the fight. What do you expect different from Chael coming into this one? Do you almost think that fighting Wanderlei, he's got to show? We almost got a little look at this fight when they were both coaches in the Ultimate Fighter. Wanderlei swung wild and Chael went for the takedown. But what do you expect to see differently from Chael here, from the Tito fight?
We better see something different. I mean, I'm right there with you. I was, you know, it was a disappointing fight. He didn't seem sharp. He didn't seem ring rust is real, man. Anyone who says it's not doesn't spend enough time watching a sport, because he had that sense of you can't figure out what you're doing. You can't remember what you're doing and do it at the same time. You can't. You have to be completely prepared where it's automatic. And nothing in that fight for Chael was automatic. He was thinking about everything he was doing. He made some decisions that I don't think he would have made a couple years before when he was fighting regularly, things like that. So he has to do something different. And, of course, he's taking on a guy that he can take down. that wrestling has always been one of his Achilles heels, that, you know, is going to stand and bang and throw wild punches, a lot of opportunities for the takedown. So he's fighting a very different guy in this fight. And I think that's huge, is that Chael can kind of get comfortable with his wrestling, get comfortable with his takedown, get comfortable with his top control against a guy who has been vulnerable to that kind of pressure before. And he's not facing a guy, Tito Ortiz, a really big light heavyweight who had been wrestling for years, and, you know, jiu-jitsu and top game and pressure is his game. Wanderlei, that's not his game. His game is to come out and try and knock your head off. So he has a very different opponent in front of him, which will allow him to get much more comfortable much faster.
One thing you said, ring rust is real. Wanderlei hasn't been in a cage since 2013. Realistically, a 40-year-old Wanderlei, what are we expecting to see coming out of Wanderlei? Have you watched him do any work backstage? Have you seen any of his training camp or anything like that? What do we think here? 4 years. His last one was an absolute war with Brian Stan. Jesus, that was that fun.
I mean, that's the question for everybody. Is Wanderlei going to look like Wanderlei? Is he going to be physically prepared? Is he going to be mentally prepared? I haven't seen any of his backstage stuff. He's been in Brazil this entire time, as far as I'm aware. I haven't seen any open workouts. I haven't seen the kind of stuff I would usually see. We'd get some setup stuff. I'd be able to have clips of the guy working out. He's been, as far as I know, in Brazil this entire time. So I haven't seen anything. And Wanderlei's style isn't, gee, I'll feel it out and see what I'm doing. That's never been him. He doesn't fight well if he's not sharp. He doesn't fight well if he's not aggressive. He doesn't fight well if he doesn't come out with confidence. So that is a huge, huge, huge factor in this fight, is how is Wanderlei's timing going to be with the time he's had off.
That is certainly intriguing. The one that we didn't get, we just missed out on, is the co-main event. I never thought I'd say the co-main event and then say Fedor and go after it. Like, take it on Matt Mitrione. They were obviously scheduled to fight before. Unfortunately, Matt had to pull out. But what do we see here? Is that more an advantage for Mitrione or more advantage for Fedor, or does that even come into play, the fact that it was delayed?
I don't think it comes in that much. I think any delay at Fedor's age is bad. I don't, you know, it's when you're a young man and you're fighting all the time and you're regular in the gym and you're kind of more closer to your physical prime. That's where you want to fight, is in that sweet spot. Fedor, obviously an older fighter. Anytime he has to go into camp and doesn't get a fight, that's gas out of the tank. That's wearing the gears off, and you don't get the fight you expected. That's never good. So I would say the time off, I don't think there's an advantage for either guy, but it hurts Fedor more that he had to go through a 6 or 8 week camp and wasn't able to fight. Psychologically, tactically, I don't see much to it. Fedor's not a kind of guy who's going to get psyched out or think about the last fight. And Matt Mitrione, it was just one of those things. He was complaining about kidney stones that week. I know that. He thought they were done. He thought they were clear. He thought, oh yeah, I had this problem, but I'm okay. And it came back with a vengeance. So it wasn't like a training injury he has to take easy on. It's one of those injuries or conditions that I don't think is going to have a huge impact on the fight.
This fight, for me, this is an intriguing fight, because you could argue that Fedor's the older guy, but Fedor's 40, Matt Mitrione is 38. But in MMA years, they're light years apart. But we all know the acceleration and the speed that Matt Mitrione moves at. But one thing that, it was weird, when me watching the build-up to the fight that never happened, I don't know why, and I don't need fighters to talk trash talk, but I almost thought Mitrione was real, I wouldn't say fanboyish, but he was too almost, oh my God, you're Fedor. Yeah. Is he going to be the bunny in the headlights when the bell rings?
He can't be. And one of the questions that Jen Brown, who works with us on the broadcast, asked Matt Mitrione was, from me, I said, you know, we're sitting now, you know, what do I ask Fedor, or what do I ask Matt Mitrione? And I said, when does the legend become just another fighter? When does the legend become just another guy you need to fight? And that's a huge thing, because we just talked about Wanderlei. Fedor's a quick starter. And he throws big, huge punches from the beginning. If you're sitting there going, man, I'm there with Fedor, boom. And you're looking at a ref waving his arms. I mean, he starts very, very quickly. He doesn't know how to throw a jab. Everything's an overhand right or a left hook. You know, he just starts quickly and he hits really hard. So Matt Mitrione, who, by the way, in his Bellator career so far has been really easy to hit. You know, we saw the Carl Monatafa fight. That was supposed to be his debut, kind of his coming out party. He got dropped in the first 30 seconds and then had to come back and win that fight. And then against Ollie Thompson, a big British brawler, he walked into a lot of punches. He hasn't been difficult. His movement's good, but he has a tendency to kind of drop his hands and mug a little bit and, you know, rely on that athleticism to work for him defensively. And against Fedor, who wings big punches and throws really, really hard, that might be his downfall. We'll have to see. But he cannot take time off to soak in the fact that he's fighting Fedor. He needs to get out there and fight quickly. Sorry about that. Against a guy who is a guy he looks up to. It can't be that. It's just got to be another opponent.
Do you think that this was a little bit of a missed opportunity not to put the title on the line? The title's been vacant since, what, 2016, I think? Is it a missed opportunity for Bellator not put the heavyweight title? It seems like a perfect matchup.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people wondered that. You know, it's one of those things where it's been vacant so long. I don't think many fans would object to, hey, this is for the title. Mitrione Fedor, it's for the title. I know Scott has a how can I put it, a flair for the dramatic when it comes to stuff like that. He might want a 4-man tournament. He might want like a tournament over a few months to decide who fights for the belt, have a little build up for that title. I think that's the other side of the coin, is that, hey, that lets us do maybe a great one-night heavyweight tournament, maybe a 2-event heavyweight tournament, something like that. So the only thing I can think of, and I don't know, is that he'd want to build up and make it a little bit more tournament center to get a heavyweight champion. He loves that kind of stuff.
This is crazy. We're going down the card here, and it's great fight after great fight. But before we actually, let's wind it back to what we're going to call just the 180 card. Your headline for that, if you like, is Phil Davis versus Ryan Bader. They've run this before, but they're going to rerun it again. What do we see that's going to play out differently for this one?
How sharp Phil's looked in Bellator. I think that's a big factor, is that Bellator's really his home. He really enjoys fighting here. There's a certain edge to me to Bellator fighters defending their turf from, quote, UFC talent. Now, I know Phil Davis was UFC talent a couple years ago, big free agent signing for us, but he's really made his home here. He's had a few fights here. He's the champ, and there's a little bit of that, hey, you're not going to come in here and just blow me out of the water because you come from the UFC. I'm not scared of you. I'm not intimidated. I'm going to show you I'm not intimidated. Now, Phil Davis, they've already fought before. What you have to ask yourself is, what's changed since then? And I think the biggest factor so far is Phil Davis's comfort level in Bellator. He's looked fantastic. The only time he's really been tested was against King Mo, who's obviously a great fighter in his own right. But he's comfortable here. And Ryan Bader coming in, there's always that first fight jitters, fighting for a new promotion. I don't care what it is, fighting in Madison Square Garden. It's a big deal. It's about how Ryan handles the adjustment, because Phil Davis has handled it very, very well.
There's been talks of Bader, especially that fight, which it wasn't the most exciting fight, but there was talks of Bader, him saying that the way he fought in the UFC was different than the way he wants to fight, because he was fighting for the money rather than fighting for the enjoyment. He needed that win. Do you think anything will change here? He says that his contract is different. He's not just fighting to get that win bonus. Do you think that anything will change here? You will see a different style Ryan Bader bringing, maybe with striking or something?
We just might. I mean, one thing is also with a rematch, you want to show the guy something he hasn't seen before.
Yeah. One
thing about a rematch, anybody who breaks down a rematch says, hey, the winner fights the same fight twice. It's the loser that's got to go back to the drawing board, get new skills, figure out what went wrong, and change things around. Ryan Bader, I think that's a great attitude to have, is, hey, I'm not fighting like I did last time. He saw that guy before. I have to show him something new. I have to come in with a new angle, a different wrinkle. Regardless of whether it's contract-based, and then, oh, now I really mean it, I'm not fighting for the win bonus, whatever. I don't know how his contract is structured.
Yeah.
But the idea needs to come in and do something new against a guy he's faced before. That is an attitude he has to have.
A big one here for the Irish eyes will be smiling is James Gallagher. He called for this. He wanted the big stage, and he's certainly on it. At the young age of 20, he is an absolute phenomenon in MMA, and it's starting to go world MMA now as well, thanks to Bellator and his victories he's had in Bellator. But he's got his hands full here in Machida. This will be a stern test for Gallagher.
The problem with Shinzo Machida, or any Machida, is you're doing great, everything's working out, you're kicking his ass, you're doing whatever you have to do, and then boom, you're hit with this crazy shot you didn't see coming. And Gallagher, and I'm trying to pronounce it the Irish way.
Yeah.
There's so many Irish
no, that was good.
Gallagher. It's not Gallagher. Americans Gallagher. There's Gallagher. So Gallagher The problem he's going to have is his age. He hasn't seen a ton of looks. He doesn't have a ton of fights. He hasn't seen a lot of funky styles. I mean, I've seen him in the gym, but we haven't seen him react professionally to that Machida style. Light on the lead leg, uppercuts with the lead hand. He stands really tall. It's hard to figure a guy like that out if you don't have a lot of cage time. You haven't seen that style before. So it's going to be a good test of his maturity as a fighter, because he's going to see things in there that you don't see that often, and he's got to figure out a way around it. Good test for him.
That's a very good point, because one thing James alluded to after his fight with Anthony Taylor was he was so unpredictable, because it was almost like Taylor didn't know what he was going to do next. So that was, and again, that could come into play certainly against Machida. But again, the big thing, we had AJ McKee on here with us a few weeks back now. That's the one that everyone's building towards in Bellator, and like it's AJ done his job last time round, and it was almost over to you now, James. So that's the thing, is everyone in Bellator, fingers crossed, going, let's go, we want this.
Everyone. You understand? We're all fight fans.
Exactly.
We're all fight fans in Bellator. We're, me, the other commentators, the ring guy. We're all fight fans. So we all, behind the scenes, go, man, I can't wait to see this fight. Man, what are they going to? I mean, we're like bugging Scott Coker at dinner, like, come on, man, when you want to put this fight together? All right, it's going to happen. Come on, man. We're like that. I mean, we're fans too. So AJ versus Gallagher, it's a no-brainer. It can't miss. It's exciting. There's already some heat between those guys. It's America versus USA, and they're both so young in their careers that it's not like a loss derails the loser and he's done or something like that. I mean, they're both young. They can easily bounce back from any loss, and they're right in the sweet spot of their careers. And their styles are very, very different. I've grappled with both guys. Their styles are very, very different. And so that's just got fun written all over it. It's a matter of Gallagher not overlooking a very dangerous Shinji Machida and thinking about AJ McKee.
Well, you haven't even touched on some of the fights, so I want to get your opinion as in what's the sleeper here? What's the fight that people are going to, not even the sleeper, one that's maybe flying under the radar because of Chael's talk, because Fedor's on the card? Who isn't jumping out of the card that you're surprised almost? Because we have two title fights that we haven't even mentioned while we're talking to you here.
I think the one people are talking about the least is Chandler Primus, because Chandler's looked so good in Bellator. He looked so dominant in his last couple fights. A lot of people are just writing off Brent Primus as the guy who just happens to be in the right place at the right time, so he's getting this title shot. I've talked to Chael Sonnen, who is working with Brent Primus for this fight. Brent Primus, when they faced off in Chicago, when they were on the top of that ramp and they were getting face-to-face, Primus is a giant. That is a big dude. He towered right over Michael Chandler. He is huge for this weight class, and this is the biggest opportunity of his career. And what Chandler keeps saying is, hey, this is where I was when I fought Eddie Alvarez. This is exactly where I was. So he has an opportunity to really make his own history. And Chandler, if he doesn't wipe the floor with everybody he fights, he's disappointed. He's that guy who goes back in the locker room, and if he knocks a guy out in 40 seconds, it should have been 30. If I crush him in the second round, God, it should have been the first round. Why? He's hard on himself, man. So you're facing a guy who has virtually nothing to lose and has a chance to make his name at 155 versus a guy who wants to devastate everybody he fights. So both guys are really, really motivated. That's going to be a fun fight. I don't see it lasting long, but that's going to be a fun fight. You
done like a breakdown on your blog about that. I read it yesterday. Yeah. Really, really good. I definitely recommend people going to read it. And something that you brought up was the expectation on Chandler to wipe this guy out. And you're going to have Primus coming in. You brought it back to the Ali thing with Liston. And you said that everyone's expecting him to go in there and wipe him out. And what happens if Chandler underestimates him a little bit? Do you think that might happen? Chandler, he's gone out there. He's finished a lot of guys. And now Primus coming in. A lot of people are underestimating him.
Yeah, I don't know if Chandler will underestimate him necessarily. He tends to take everyone seriously. He's a maniac in the gym. Chandler always takes issue with the fact that I say, man, he has trouble pacing himself. He comes out really hard in the first round, and then good in the second, okay in the third, and then he starts. He's had trouble pacing himself. And he goes, you know what? It's just that I set such a hard pace in the first round. Nobody can keep up with me. And I go, yeah, but that's pacing. I go, if you set a pace in the first round, you can't keep in rounds 2, 3, and 4. That's a pacing problem. So I don't see him underestimating Primus. I see him trying to wipe him out in the first 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, you see the energy he put out against Benson Henderson?
Yeah.
I mean, you know how much energy it takes to suplex a guy and hit him with 5 right hands in a row? And the problem is, if at the end of, and I wrote this in my blog, and I mean it 100%, the turning point in this fight will be, if it happens, if Primus goes back to his corner at the end of round 3 and has 1 round in the bank, different fight. Because he can go, man, we're in the championship rounds, 4 and 5. Chandler might be fading at this point. I got a chance to do it. That would be the turning point. If it's 4-0 going into the 5th round, Primus is going to have some problems. If it's 3-0 and he has to, get a 10-8 round or finish Michael Chandler, that's tough too. But if he can bank a round of the first 3 rounds and go in feeling good at the end of round 3, could be a different fight. So it's a matter of, will Chandler expend too much energy in round 1 trying to wipe this guy off the map? Not because he doesn't believe he can be there, just because that's his style.
I think for anyone, is one thing we have to get on to Scott Coker, you have to pass it on, is get the TV rights sorted for Ireland and the UK, because we get it on delay and we can't watch it. So it's the way
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot from UK fans. Like, man, I want to watch it live. And it's so funny. People write me and I go, I don't do the TV deals, man.
Get it done.
I'm sorry.
Get it done.
Everybody could see it live, man.
No, we're putting it on you, Jimmy. You have to get it resolved.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll get right on that.
It's on you. This is for me. What stands out about this card for me is true. Sometimes when you look at a card, you'll go, yeah, he'll win. Yeah, he'll win. Yeah, he'll win. Yeah, and you can see it. This is a card of coin flips for me in a lot of them, and they're really, really well matched fights. And it's something that we've spoke a lot on this show about, how Bellator are closing that gap that looked like it was such a big gap, but this card in itself is the flagship card for Bellator for me. And the ingenious, the best signing I think Bellator have ever made was Chael Sonnen. For just, he gets guys listening. He could sell he could sell you something out of date 10 years and you would still buy it. That's how he talks. And it's good to have him promote Bellator, because what Bellator are doing is phenomenal. So I can't wait for this card. Just something I want to touch on briefly, because obviously we have Douglas Lima taking on Larkin as well. Rory MacDonald in London. How impressed were you watching Rory MacDonald's destruction of Paul Daly?
I was blown away, man. Because the only word I kept using after that fight for everybody, he looked razor sharp. He looked confident. He looked crisp. He looked clean. He looked like he wasn't going to take a backward step in that fight. And I took some heat after that fight in the interview, saying he stood and fought you. And obviously Daly took issue with that comment. But if you look at that fight, MacDonald stepped right to him, cracked him, and then took him down. Second night, stepped right to him, cracked him, took him down. It wasn't, I'm baiting the guy to takedown by backing up, I'm throwing some wild stuff just to set up the takedown. He stood in front of him and went, hey, let's go. And then hit him and then took him down. It was like, look, I'm not scared of you. I'm going to stand right toe-to-toe with you. That's how I'm going to set up my takedowns, by cracking you. That's what I meant by that comment, is he didn't back up. He didn't fight scared. He didn't move away from you. And, man, anybody in this division, you got to be looking at Rory MacDonald going, whoever wins in New York is going right back into the gym. Because they got Rory MacDonald coming for him, and that guy looks like, and he's not an emotional guy. He isn't. I mean, he's got the American Psycho thing going on completely. The guy is just rock solid. But after that fight, the relief on his face, and that's why I asked him about the emotions he was feeling. Just like, oh man, just like, switching promotions and the surgery and everything, that's all in the past. All this loss kind of puts that all behind me. This makes him more dangerous, man. Now that he's more relaxed and loose and like, oh, man, now it's, whoo, this monkey's off my back. Now I get to get the title. So whoever wins in New York can't go celebrating out in Times Square. They better get back to the gym that night and start worrying about Rory MacDonald.
But how exciting is that fight, Larkin and Lima? That is such a good fight. Such well-matched fight.
Lima's one of those guys where if you never saw Bellator, if you were just a UFC guy and I meet you out on the street and you tell me, man, I heard about this Bellator thing, who's the guy to watch? Man, Lima's a monster. He is just an absolute beast. And when he hits guys, he sleeps them. He's one of the few guys that I look at a weigh-in, post, whatever, and I go, how on earth do you make 170 pounds? He's light heavyweight size. And he stands next to Phil Davis. They're roughly the same size, a little bit smaller than Phil Davis. He's huge. And when he hits guys, they go out. There's nothing you can do. So that the Larkin Lima fight is about as exciting a fight as you could make with the talent we have, and I cannot wait to see it.
Before we get to a couple of fan questions, we're just going to have there's 2 big debuts, Heather Hardy and Aaron Pico. 2 big debuts for Bellator. Hardy said that she's going to stay boxing as well as MMA. How difficult is that going to be, and how excited are you to see Pico make his debut?
Staying in boxing, MMA, I think she can do it. Just because they complement each other a little better. To flip that over into a Pico question, I've had a lot of wrestlers tell me, Joe Warren and Ben Askren both said, I'm going to win an MMA, and then I might, I'll go back and win another Olympic. I'll win Olympic gold in 12. No, wrestling is not the kind of sport you can do part-time and expect to be successful. It's, Joe Warren told me, he says, I went back to the Olympic Training Center, wherever he was training, and he said, guys, I was thumping 2 years ago, suddenly we're like, oh man, these guys are good. The whole time I got to spend, working on my boxing, my kickboxing, my jiu-jitsu, all they're doing is wrestling. That's it. That's all those guys are doing. So the Aaron Pico thing, we do these fight breakdowns. Obviously, you see them on social media and YouTube or whatever, where I break down a fight. And we're going to do Aaron Pico. So I'm sitting there and they go, well, what do you have to say about the Pico fight? And I went, he's never fought before. Yeah. I go, I could talk about wrestling. But those names that, Frank Molinaro and Jason Ness, that mean anything to you? No, you're not a wrestling fan. I could talk about other things, about stuff he's done, but MMA is like skydiving. There's no kind of skydiving. Either you have done it or you haven't. You either jumped out of a plane or you didn't. So it's very hard to break it down. He has all the skills. I've heard all the gym stories about him laying guys out. And we had a production call that I will share with you guys about the upcoming card. And the first thing I said is, hey guys, if we sell Aaron Pico that he's the next big thing and all stuff, and let's say he destroys a guy in Madison Square Garden, it's hard to then go back and go, well, he's fighting on an undercard in Michigan somewhere. Yeah. I go, it's once we put him up as this, the next big thing, it's hard for us to then go, wait, he needs a few more fights. Yeah. And they went, we don't care. Go all the way. He is LeBron James. He is Kevin Garnett. He's Kobe Bryant. He's the guy who's going from high school to the pros because he's that good. As far as you go, we're ready to back you up with our matchmaking. In terms of, I won't sell him as the next big thing, and then they'll turn around and book him a fight that's not meaningful. Yeah. They said, go all the way, he is that good. So the promotion itself, the promoters, the Scott Cokers, the Rich Chows, the guys who are making the matches, they believe he is the next big thing in MMA, 100%. All their chips are in. They are doubling down on Aaron Pico. He is the guy. He's going to do it in Madison Square Garden. So they have 1,000% faith in this guy, and I've heard all the stories. I can't wait to see this guy fight. I've followed his wrestling career, throughout the Olympic trials and everything, and I can't wait to see the guy fight. Let's see what he's got.
No pressure, Aaron Pico.
Yeah, no pressure. No big deal.
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever. That's insane, because I did say to Robert before the start, who's this Pico guy? Because I was saying, and I was like, you haven't heard of Aaron Pico? And so he was slaying me before we came on here. We're gonna throw Wonderful World of Reddit at you, Jimmy. Some of them are weird and wonderful, and some of them are sort of normal. So Jack Dalsol asks, will you be working with Brendan Schaub at the New York City event?
No. From what I understand, is the way they'll have it set up is Brendan Schaub and whomever else will have kind of an opening desk. Yeah. Welcome to Madison Square Garden. Let's discuss the fight. And then they'll throw down to us. So as far as I know, from what I understand, they'll be in kind of a stand-up position or a desk-seated position. Welcome to Madison Square Garden. Break down the fights a little bit. Do some fill, but the actual play-by-play will be normal. That will just be a two-man booth for that show. That Brendan Schaub will be throwing to us. Maybe we go back and forth about some stuff, but he'll be sitting in a different area, kind of, doing the desk thing, throwing us.
And again, smart thinking. Brendan Schaub with the fighter and the kid is absolutely huge. So again, great work again. Smart work, We've got Dimison. Any chance of Jimmy taking part in a grappling match like EBI or Minimortis in the future?
The thing is, I grapple as much as I can when I'm at home. The level of commitment it takes these days to do an EBI, to do a Metamoris, to do a professional grappling tournament. Though that's all they do. It's 6 days a week. That's their job. I'm on the road 26 weeks out of the year. I mean, it's so people ask me all the time, "Are you going to get back into MMA?" No way. I'm not doing that again. But, you know, even grappling, like, you don't understand, it's 5 days a week. It's taking the skin off chicken, and I am not that age anymore. Where it would be tough because I don't have the time to put in. I love grappling. I still do jiu-jitsu. I'm a black belt, all that stuff. It's just the time it takes to put into a professional grappling match. They're pros. I mean, that's all these guys do, and I don't have the time to commit to that level, aside from all the injuries I've had over my career. But it's the time. I just don't have the time to put in that other guys do.
From username Your Mom on Speed Dial, can we get Jimmy on Joe Rogan fight companion sometime?
You know, I've already been on that. People ask me all the time. I've been on once on the Fight Companion, and then I was on his podcast just as a guest once. When I was on there, it was me, Joe, and Uncle Creepy, and we were doing a Fight Companion, and it went for 5.5 hours. Yeah. It was the longest podcast he had ever done because we did the I forget which card it was. We sat there and we did it, and we're doing the fight, and then they turn it off, and we just sit there and we start talking, and that ended up going another 2.5 hours. I think it's the longest podcast he's ever done. It was me, Ian McCall, and Joe Rogan just sitting there talking about fighting 5.5 hours. So I've been on for a total of, I think, 8 hours or something crazy.
No chemtrails or the earth is flat conversation that day?
No, I used to teach math, and I went to college, so I don't get into those kind of conversations if I can possibly avoid it. It's so funny. I was doing one of the fight breakdowns that we always do, and the guy goes, the producer who's doing it, he goes, "Hey man, did you see that thing on Kron Gracie and Eddie Bravo talking about flat Earth?" And I went, "No, I didn't." Well, what do you? I go, "Stop talking. It's the dumbest thing on the planet." The idea that anybody would think that. Yeah. I want to have nothing to do with those discussions. Nothing at all. And so I was very lucky we were able to stay away from all that.
My favorite comment was on a flat earth thing. Someone went, "Everybody around the globe knows that the earth is flat." And somebody said, "Read back what you just wrote." Classic.
The only comment I will say about that is that, you know, Socrates once said that the only sin is ignorance. That if you knew what you were doing, the consequences of what you're doing, you would never do it. That we just don't know what we're doing. That's why we do bad things. That's what Socrates said. And what's so disturbing about today's culture, society, whatever the hell you want to call it, is all the information's there. Yeah. We're willfully ignorant. We decide not to look at things. Now we don't know. We just decide not to. I mean, the idea that a philosophy or whatever the fuck you want to call it is gaining traction when we have photos of a round Earth from space is ridiculous. It's just, you know, it's you turn away from what you don't want, you turn away from what you don't like, and it's ridiculous. So anyway, moving on.
Our last one is a request from Kilo. It says, "Please ask Jimmy Smith to unblock me on Twitter for calling him a fake Joe Rogan. I really love him."
What's the guy's name?
He's spelling it here as Kieloh. Kilo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not.
He really loves you.
I have no interest in that. No, it's funny. People ask me that all the time because I'm constantly compared to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I don't mind the comparisons themselves. It's the easiest way, honestly, to explain what I do to people.
Yeah.
Like, because I'll go, "I'm an MMA color commentator," and they don't know what MMA means, and they don't know what color commentator is. So I just go, "You know what Joe Rogan does for the UFC?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "Yeah, I do that for somebody else." It's honestly the easiest way to explain what I do. I don't mind the comparisons. I don't mind, you know, like, "Oh, you do it." It's funny. Michael Bisping was in the cage with me one time. One of his fighters fought, and so we're in the cage in between commercial. I'm about to interview his guy, so we're just standing there. There's a commercial on, and I go, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" He goes, "Hey, you know, Jim, what's going on?" And he goes, and I go, "Hey, man, I don't know if we've met yet." And he goes, "Oh, I know who you are, man. You're Joe for Bellator." And I went, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, it's not an insult. It's the easiest way to describe what I do. Like, oh, yeah, you're Joe Rogan for Bellator. Yeah, how you doing, man?" I was we end up talking or whatever. But I don't mind that. It's when people are insulting or people go, "Yeah, if you just come at me and go, 'You're a fake Joe Rogan,' fuck you."
Yeah,
you know, I don't know.
block button's like, there for it.
It's the idea that the implication that I think Joe and I call fights very, very differently. The idea that I somehow
100%.
look at in the mirror and try and we look similar. I will admit that. But it's the idea that I somehow look in the mirror and try and act like him or do what he does. And I think we call fights really, really differently. I think we have a really different perspective. His lineage is 10th Planet. Mine is Carlson Gracie. His lineage is like a lot of kicking martial arts, taekwondo stuff. I was a wrestler. So we just have very different backgrounds. We call fights very, very differently. And so the idea that I am attempting to do everything like him, I don't think we sound similar at all when it comes to how we break down fights. But yeah, the funny part is people be insulting to me on social media and then immediately back down and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was just..." Well, I didn't ask for your opinion in the first place. I'm getting paid either way. Everything's going great. But people reach out for no reason and they're insulting you. You're never going to get that back. I'm never going to go, "Okay, I don't need another follower." It doesn't add anything to my life to have whatever this guy's name is following me. I don't notice. I don't remember the blocking the guy. So that's the funny part. Is it's a big deal to them. Well, don't be a dick, because if you said that to me on the street, there'd be a problem. Yeah. And that's another thing that's so funny is that people always say, "Oh, has anybody ever walked up to you and saying, insulted you?" Do you ever get the insults that you get on Twitter in real life? And I said, not once. Yeah. Not once in real life, after a show, on the street, has anybody come up and said, "You're a fake Joe Rogan." Because it wouldn't work out well. There would be a problem there. So that's the funny part to me is people on social media act in a way that they would never act in real life. And so the consequences are the same. I just don't want anything to do with it.
When we were talking to John Wayne Parr, he said there's an element like Facebook, people might be a little insulting, but because you can see their profile, who they are. Then it goes to Twitter, the next level, where they can sort of fake up anonymous accounts and stuff, and then it goes to like Instagram. They're pretty nice in Instagram, and then it goes to like Reddit, and like they will slay everybody, and it's because you're completely anonymous. And he said, so your different social medias have different levels of trolls. Keyboard warriors and trolls. Look, we're going to let you go, Jimmy. I cannot wait to watch Bellator New York, hear you call it. Look forward to you being back here in Ireland as well. I know there's rumours of coming back as well, and in the UK. But thanks a million for taking the time, and have a great show.
Anything we can do for you, man. Appreciate the time, buddy.
You're a gent. Thank you very much, sir. Take care.